I am no longer going to call WrestleMania 42 WrestleMania. Instead, I'm going to be calling it Celebrity-Mania, because clearly WWE loves their celebrities and influencers more than they do their own talent. The Pat McAfee and Randy Orton pairing is literally one of the worst pairings in all of professional wrestling. Like, it was that bad. The fact that Pat McAfee is acknowledging that WrestleMania is not selling well in ticket sales on WWE's own program is baffling to me. You got people like CM Punk live on Raw telling TKO to lower ticket prices, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, bro, you literally get a paycheck from TKO, the people you criticize. Talk about hypocrisy. TNA embarrassed themselves yet again by banning TNA talent from working AEW talent at indie shows. Apparently, the rumored reason as to why that decision was made was because of the fact that Collision was going head-to-head with Impact. And apparently, Carlos Silva was very upset about that. Meanwhile, he's too stupid to realize that that wasn't an AEW decision, that was a Warner Brothers Discovery call. But that's the rumored reason as to why that happened. I think there's another reason as to why this took place, and it's not really that obvious to point out who is behind it.
The recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Get stealing, woo, wheeling, dealing, limousine riding, jet flying, son of a gun. Yeah! Kurt Angle, yeah! Why, Triple H, you son of a tell me why! And Tony Khan, this is also on you!
I am going to ruin wrestling.
Just get over it!
WrestleMania 42 is upon us, and I shouldn't really call WrestleMania 42 WrestleMania 42. If anything, I should call WrestleMania 42 Celebrity-Mania 42, because that is exactly what WrestleMania essentially has become. AJ Styles wasn't lying when he said, you know, WrestleMania kind of lost its luster. It's just another PLE. Yeah, I agree with AJ. WrestleMania has kind of lost its luster. There's no mystique behind WrestleMania anymore, in my opinion. We kind of had that luster 2 years ago with WrestleMania 40. We had that with WrestleMania 39. Both of those WrestleManias, in my opinion, will go down as one of the greatest, or one of the best WrestleManias. Not the greatest, but one of the best WrestleManias of all time. WrestleMania 41 last year was, looking back in a sense, kind of a train wreck. Especially with Cody Rhodes and John Cena. Everybody expected WWE to look at what they did with WrestleMania last year and really fix all of the wrongs that they did last year with WrestleMania and fix all of those problems going into this year's WrestleMania. Instead, we kind of gotten the same thing. We've gotten this we've kind of gotten the same thing that we got last year. If anything, we've gotten the thing that's actually way worse. I don't know why I incorporated the thing in that sentence, but whatever. We basically gotten WrestleMania 41 2.0, and that equals essentially WrestleMania 42. WrestleMania 42, in my opinion, the build for this show has been atrocious. I honestly could care less about what's going on across the board in terms of WrestleMania. The product, the WWE product, is at an all-time low now. Is it like the worst thing in the world? No, I've seen way worse. And the people that are advocating for the return of Vince McMahon clearly do not know what they want, because they are advocating for Vince McMahon. Meanwhile, if you look at the WWE creatively in 2019 or 2018, 2019, and hell, during the pandemic in 2020, it was at an all-time low from a creative standpoint. It was the worst bits of TV you could possibly watch. I can remember vividly reviewing those shows on a week-to-week basis and say, Raw is actively the worst show on television. It's not even funny. It is the worst show that you could possibly watch on television. Triple H takes the book and things turn around and WWE actually becomes hot. And it actually becomes cool again to be a WWE fan. You know, for many years, especially those later years where Vince McMahon was in charge, a lot of people actually looked down upon wrestling because they're like, what the hell is this? This is not the wrestling that I used to grow up on. Now, when Triple H took the book, actually people were coming back, especially with the Sami Zayn storyline. I mean, the Sami Zayn storyline was absolutely fantastic. And of course, Vince McMahon kind of roamed around a little bit, but to be fair, it was still the Triple H show at the end of the day, even though Vince McMahon was still kind of pulling strings and trying to get the company back after he was forced out, because that's exactly what happened. He was forced out. He sells the company to Endeavor. These people will actually want Vince McMahon to come out, or Vince McMahon to return. They want Vince McMahon to run creative again. Meanwhile, these people don't realize that Vince McMahon, who was the majority shareholder of WWE at the time, was the one that actually sold the company to Ari Emanuel and Endeavor. He was the one that did that, ensuring that he was going to have security. And he made a shit ton of money doing it. And then, of course, as the deal closed in early 2024, all the Vince McMahon stuff, the Janelle Grant stuff came out about him, and he was essentially forced out again. What is basically my whole point here? WWE has lost its luster. They have. WWE is not the same anymore. And honestly, the honeymoon phase, and it's been a thing like that for at least over a year at this point, but the honeymoon phase of the Triple H era is long gone. WWE has essentially shifted from focusing on long-term storytelling to in-the-moment viral moments. They only care about the moments, but they don't care about the long-term longevity that those moments lead to. They don't care about the long-term approach anymore. They don't. They care about the now. They care about the now. They care about viral moments on social media. They care more about influencers being a part of the show rather than their own talent. And at the end of the day, WWE has essentially become a hub for a lot of celebrities and influencers to just roam around and get a cheap pop. That's exactly what WWE has become. And look no further than Randy Orton and Pat McAfee. Randy Orton and Pat McAfee, that pairing is easily one of the worst pairings that I've ever seen in my entire life. And I will go more in depth as I talk about that, because I'm going to be honest, man, that was literally laughable. Like what I saw between Randy Orton and Pat McAfee, the fact that Pat McAfee was the one that was talking to Randy Orton on the phone throughout the past couple of weeks is laughable. Like it's literally the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. And we will go more in depth about that later on this edition of the WrestleHavoc Podcast. Also, we're going to be talking about TNA. TNA was in the hot seat. They not only had a pay-per-view this past Saturday, which, by the way, I did not watch. I could care less about what's going on in the realm of TNA. I stopped caring about TNA roughly after the second or third week since joining AMC. Like, I stopped caring about TNA. And I think a lot of other people stopped caring about TNA. All the hype about TNA being the number 2 promotion, clearly a lot of those people look very foolish. And TNA looked way more foolish in this instance, because if you guys do not know, they are banning their wrestlers from working with AEW talent in one-on-one matches at indie shows. And we're going to be going in depth about that as well, because it sparked a lot of conversation. A lot of people had their own opinions on that whole matter. And I definitely had my opinion on that matter as well. So I will be talking about that later on this edition of the WrestleHavoc Podcast. Plus, we're going to be giving you guys our preview and predictions for WrestleMania 42, which will be taking place this weekend. Celebrity-Mania. That's what it's called. Celebrity-Mania is running wild. From now on, I'm going to call WrestleMania Celebrity-Mania. We're going to be giving you guys our preview and predictions for Celebrity-Mania as well. Plus, if you guys do not know, AEW actually had a pay-per-view last night, that being Dynasty. We are going to recap Dynasty as well. I really enjoyed the show last night. MJF and Kenny Omega pulled up. They had a banger at Dynasty. And surprisingly, there wasn't even a lot of blood throughout the entirety of the show. Normally, when you watch these AEW pay-per-views, you'd see constant bloodbaths on a back-to-back basis. Like I can remember Revolution last year where we had the Hollywood ending between Toni Storm and Mariah May, and that was a bloody encounter. And then we had a steel cage match between Kyle Fletcher and Will Ospreay, which again was another bloody encounter. Like AEW loves to ramp it up. They love ramping up the violence in terms of their pay-per-views, but we didn't really get a lot of crazy ass violence like we would normally get on an AEW pay-per-view. But we're going to be talking about AEW Dynasty on this edition of the WrestleHavoc Podcast as well. But that being said, this is the WrestleHavoc Podcast. I'm filming this on Monday, April 13th, 2026. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this edition of the WrestleHavoc Podcast. It is Celebrity-Mania season. It is Celebrity-Mania week, because Celebrity-Mania is going to be taking place this coming weekend. And we're going to be covering both shows. We're going to be covering night 1 and night 2 on this very podcast this coming weekend. So be on the lookout for that. But also, please make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc Podcast channel, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the freaking referee would say, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Also, if you guys are watching this on WNN platforms, I thank you guys so much for watching me on those platforms as well. Also, my main channel, WrestleHavoc, I uploaded a video last week talking about how WWE just killed themselves. It actually did pretty good, and it did really well in viewership. So if you guys want, the link will be in the description below. I urge you guys to watch that video. The link will be in the description below. And also, without any further ado, also subscribe to that main WrestleHavoc channel as well. We upload a lot of content on there as well. The link will be in the description below. But without any further ado, let's get started with the WrestleHavoc Podcast. We're going to start off with AEW Dynasty. AEW Dynasty took place last night, and overall, I thoroughly enjoyed the pay-per-view. The pay-per-view was pretty good at the end of the day. Of course, we had the main event. We had MJF taking on Kenny Omega for the AEW World Championship. This was their second match ever in the entire history of AEW. Their first match took place on an episode of Collision in late 2023. This match was dubbed The Devil versus the God of Professional Wrestling. We also had matches like Jon Moxley versus Will Ospreay. We had, of course, FTR taking on Edge and Christian. We had Darby Allin taking on Andrade. Ricochet facing off against a returning Chris Jericho. Chris Jericho made his AEW return a couple of weeks ago on Dynamite, and from what it looks like, he has signed a new deal with All Elite Wrestling. So from what it looks like, Chris Jericho did not want that retirement tour that WWE wanted him to have, because clearly Chris Jericho said, dude, I'm not done yet. I'm not done yet. He didn't want to be a part of that crew of old timers that were like, yeah, you know, you're gonna have a retirement tour like, you know, the Goldbergs, the John Cenas, the AJ Styles. Like he didn't want WWE to feed Chris. He didn't want Gunther. He didn't want Gunther to you know, to eat Chris Jericho. Like, you know, he kind of knew, like, if I join WWE, it's gonna be a great moment, but I'm gonna be fed to Gunther. I'm gonna be fed to Gunther. Chris Jericho made his return to AEW a couple of weeks ago when he faced off against Ricochet. His first match back in well over a year, and he looked absolutely phenomenal. But we're going to run down the entire card from Dynasty again. Dynasty took place in Vancouver. And again, overall, I thought the show was fantastic. I thought the show was really good. Was it the best AEW pay-per-view? No, I actually thought Revolution was actually a better show. It had a better main event. Hangman versus MJF, the Texas Death Match. I'm not saying that Kenny versus MJF was by all means bad. If anything, it was an amazing match. I can't really compare it to their first match because I haven't watched their first match back. I remember watching it live, but I haven't watched their first match back in quite some time, so I can't really, say that this match was better, but this match alone was pretty good. But in terms of AEW Dynasty, again, the show was not bad by any stretch of the imagination. It was a pretty good show. It definitely went on a little bit too long, but I actually believe that it ended a little bit earlier than expected because normally with these AEW pay-per-views, they tend to be really long. They let's be real with ourselves. Like these shows tend to be really long, but honestly, in terms of the length of the show, it wasn't as bad as other pay-per-views because like Revolution, like that show was way too long. A lot of AEW pay-per-views last year were way too long as well. But let's run down this entire card for AEW Dynasty and talk about the results. Of course, we had the 0 hour. We had Alex Windsor defeating Marina Shafir. A returning Camille defeated Big Ann. We had Jungle Man defeating Mark Davis. And, of course, that being Jungle Boy Jack Perry. I don't like calling him Jungle Man, even though he ain't no boy anymore, but let's just call him Jack Perry. Jack Perry retained his AEW national title. And, of course, we had the Divine Dominion retain their AEW women's tag team titles against High-End and Maya World. All right, moving on to the main card. We had the Young Bucks taking on Okada and Takeshita. This was a pretty good opening match, man. I'm not going to lie. I've said I'm a big fan of the Young Bucks, and I've said my fair share about the Young Bucks throughout the past couple of years, especially when they turned into the quote-unquote evil EVPs. That was easily their worst work ever. Like, I've always said this. After Brawl Out, like, the popularity of the Young Bucks just kind of diminished. And I feel like they started to get their footing back together, and I really appreciate that. The match between the Young Bucks and Okada and Takeshita, number one, I love the dynamic that they're creating between Okada and Takeshita. Of course, eventually we're going to be getting another match between both men. And knowing the outcome of this match, we're definitely going to be getting that match at Double or Nothing, considering Double or Nothing this year is going to be a big show in New York City. But the Young Bucks actually defeated Okada and Takeshita. Of course, there was a lot of spots that caused a lot of arguments between Okada and Takeshita. By the way, Don Callis was on commentary like he is for a lot of the Don Callis family matches. But I can remember there was a scene where, of course, both of the Bucks applied sharpshooters on both Okada and Takeshita. And Okada was about to tap out, but Takeshita was like, don't you dare tap out. Of course, there were moments where both of them slapped each other. Like, again, the story of this match was not even the Young Bucks against Okada and Takeshita. The story of this match was, can they coexist? And I know a lot of people hate the idea of two guys that absolutely hate each other being involved in a tag team match. But considering this is Okada and Takeshita, of course, everybody's definitely going to keep an eye on this because we know we're going to be getting an eventual match between the two men. We already got that at World's End in December. But a lot of people did not like that first match. I thought the match was totally fine, but it's not, a match that they were, I don't want to say capable of having, but like we all knew Okada and Takeshita were capable of more in that match. And, as we head towards a second match or even a third match, which I definitely do see being the case, that they're going to go balls to the wall in terms of that one-on-one match. Well, the finish of this match had, of course, Takeshita basically backing out and essentially having the Young Bucks, hitting their finisher and just leaving Kazuchika Okada high and dry. That was basically the whole story coming out of this match, and 100% this is going to be leading towards another Okada versus Takeshita match, which is basically the match that we've all wanted to see for a while at this point. Of course, coming out of the World's End match, we want to see more of that, but overall, it was a really good opener. We had Ricochet taking on Chris Jericho. This was Chris Jericho's first match in well over a year. Chris Jericho, of course, made his return to All Elite Wrestling after a lot of reports saying that he's probably going to WWE, but as of right now, that is not, or I should say no longer, going to be the case. Again, Chris Jericho does not want to be fed to Gunther. Gunther retired Goldberg, he retired John Cena, he retired AJ Styles. He does not want to be the next name on the list because for a fact, if Chris Jericho had returned to WWE, WWE would have literally rolled out the farewell tour red carpet for Chris Jericho. And you guys know where that leads them, straight to Gunther. But overall, man, number one, I got to say this about Chris Jericho. Look, even though I personally would have wanted Chris Jericho to return to WWE, I totally respect his move in staying with AEW. Now, apparently, AEW froze his contract, which, I mean, clearly, they were kind of stunned by the possibility that Chris Jericho could return to WWE. But from what it looks like, Chris Jericho signed a new deal with the company. And Tony even stated in, the media scrums and even in the press, in the conference calls, like, hey, look, Chris Jericho expressed my interest. Like, he wants to stay here. And I appreciate that. But one thing I will say is that from where we saw Chris Jericho a year ago, everybody, including myself, wanted Chris Jericho gone. Like, we've all wanted Chris Jericho to be gone from AEW. Simply because of the fact that a lot of the stuff that he was doing, especially with the learning tree, was just god-awful. Let's just be realistic with ourselves. Like, a lot of the stuff that he was doing with the learning tree was downright terrible. Easily one of Chris Jericho's worst pieces of work. It was bad. But he came out to Judas. Chris Jericho returned with the Judas theme, not that other Fozzy song that he was using. And one thing I've noticed is the crowds are not singing Judas as loud as I thought they were. Because, again, the fan base was just, Chris Jericho. It's gotten to the point where Chris Jericho was essentially getting go-away heat. That's how crazy it has gotten. He was getting go-away heat with the audience. And look, the crowd, they were singing Judas, but they weren't singing Judas as loud, unfortunately. But Chris Jericho is in fantastic shape for his age. He is 55 years old, and he is in phenomenal shape. You can definitely see that Chris Jericho absolutely cares about, his appearance and how he performs in the ring. Just look at his physique. He is definitely in shape. But I'm surprised. I'm absolutely surprised that Ricochet actually got the win over this match. You would think Chris Jericho would go over in his first match back after well over a year, but no, that wasn't the case. Ricochet actually got the win in this match, and that is actually surprising. That is absolutely shocking to me at this point. But Ricochet got the win. Let's see what plan AEW has essentially with Chris Jericho. It's very weird to have him lose his first match, but again, we are going to have to wait and see at the end of the day. We had a singles match. We had Darby Allin taking on Andrade El Idolo, and basically whoever won this match was going to face MJF for the AEW World Championship. So this was a number one contenders match. This was a great match, by the way. This was a phenomenal match. Great combination. Darby Allin, we all know about Darby Allin. A lot of people dub him as the face of AEW, essentially what Sting was to WCW. And I'm not saying that because Darby Allin was paired with Sting. I'm saying that because it is actually very true. When people think AEW, people think of guys like Darby Allin. But Darby Allin has never won the AEW World Championship before. And this is actually going to spark a lot of conversation after I run through this whole show because, Darby Allin did get the win over Andrade El Idolo. And by the way, Andrade, ever since joining AEW, has been doing phenomenal work. Absolutely phenomenal work. I think he made the right decision of returning to AEW, especially after all the things that went down in WWE. Unfortunately, Andrade was one of those people that got lost in the shuffle. When he returned to WWE in 2024, he definitely did get lost in the shuffle. And Andrade is somebody that, he takes pride in what he does. And Andrade, ever since returning to AEW, has been doing phenomenal stuff. Even if he would lose some of his matches and they would book him to lose some of these matches, like he did with Darby Allin in this instance, Again, Andrade looked he looked strong in this match, 100%. But Darby Allin defeated Andrade El Idolo, and he's going to get a title shot against MJF. Now, I'm going to say this right here and right now because Tony Khan actually made the announcement that this Wednesday on Dynamite at their special Spring Breakthrough show, MJF is going to be defending his title against Darby Allin. It's going to be a world title match on free television. Now, I personally thought, and I'm being dead serious, I personally thought that we were going to have a build for a Darby Allin versus MJF match at Double or Nothing. That is honestly the perfect main event for Double or Nothing in New York City. In my opinion, I genuinely believe that an MJF versus Darby Allin match would be the perfect main event for Double or Nothing. But at the same time, the fact that this match is happening on free television gave a lot of people assumptions and bold predictions that MJF was going to drop the AEW World title to Darby Allin. I'm going to say this right here and right now. And I like Darby Allin, by the way. This is not me hating on Darby Allin. I like Darby Allin as a performer and as a character. And I do believe he is a main event caliber guy, and he is going to win the AEW World Championship in the future. Now, granted, a lot of people say he should have won the AEW World title last year, but he focused more on Mount Everest than he did winning the world title. Let's be honest with ourselves. No shade on Darby, by the way. Darby should not win the AEW World title this Wednesday on Dynamite. He should not. He should not. Now, MJF and Darby Allin have a lot of history together. Of course, they wrestled at Full Gear in 2021, and that whole match was based off of the side headlock takeover. I'm going to pin you with the side headlock takeover, and that's exactly what happened. They had the four-way match at Double or Nothing a couple of years ago with MJF, Darby Allin, Jack Perry, and Sammy Guevara, the four pillars of AEW. Now, granted, if you look at the four pillars now, Jack Perry is essentially relegated to the 0 hour. Sammy Guevara is essentially doing, I don't know what he's doing at this point in terms of his wrestling career. He hasn't evolved at all. And Darby Allin and MJF are really the only two pillars out of all of the four. I don't even consider Jack Perry and Sammy Guevara pillars at this point. I really do not. I really do not. But MJF got the win in that match, and I believe he did hit a side headlock takeover on Darby Allin to get the win. Continuing on with that story. So I believe this is going to be their third match in AEW. Their second one-on-one match, but their third match as a whole. I'm going to stress this as possible. Look, again, I like Darby Allin, but I'm going to stress this. Like, I can't stress enough how detrimental it would be for MJF to drop the AEW World title to Darby Allin, only for Darby Allin to have a short title run and drop it back to MJF. People need to understand this, and it correlates with MJF as a top guy, and it correlates to Wembley Stadium as well, and it correlates to hell even what main event would we like to see for Wembley Stadium in August? Would we want to see Will Ospreay versus Kenny Omega 3, or Will Ospreay versus MJF for the AEW World title? I don't care what anybody says. MJF has eyeballs on the product right now. Him being the world champion is good for business at this point. Let's just be realistic with ourselves. MJF is the only true star that AEW has at the moment. Yes, he's a homegrown guy, but he's like the only true star that is able to cross over to the mainstream. Hell, MJF is diving deep into acting as well. He is the world champion. MJF is getting eyeballs on the product. More people are talking about AEW simply because of the fact that MJF is the world champion. And you're going to throw that all the way by giving the belt to Darby Allin only for Darby to have a short title run and have no long-term plan whatsoever for Darby Allin and have him dropping the title back to MJF. What good does that do for Darby Allin? I'll tell you the answer to that right here and right now. It does nothing for Darby Allin. It's an in-the-moment thing that these promoters need to stop doing. They need to stop booking for the moment and look towards the future. Darby Allin will eventually win the AEW World title. He will. He will win the World Championship. Do not get it twisted. He will eventually win the World title. Some people may say his time has passed. It should have been last year, but nobody wanted Darby Allin to win the title considering he wasn't on television all those months because he was climbing Mount Everest. So people turned to Hangman Page. And AEW actually did the right move by booking Hangman Page to win the title. Now, granted, Hangman's title run wasn't that great considering the fact that they had him drop the title to Samoa Joe, which to me made no sense. Looking back, it made no sense. They should have had Hangman have a lengthy title run and have Hangman drop the title to MJF, but they didn't do that. But doesn't matter. MJF is still the world champion. And he's having a monster run with the belt right now. If anything, this run is actually 10 times better than his first run. Nothing against his first run back in 2023. He had a phenomenal 2023. But this run is really the true run that, really makes MJF into a made guy. He was already a made guy. But this run right now, the run that MJF is having right now is solidifying MJF as one of the best wrestlers today. More people are watching AEW right now because of MJF. MJF has that crossover appeal. And you're going to risk all of that you're going to risk all of that for Darby Allin. And you're not even doing Darby Allin any favors because of the fact that he's only going to hold the title for a couple of weeks. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. If you honestly believe that Darby Allin is going to hold on to that title, if he wins this coming Wednesday, if he wins that title this Wednesday, do you honestly believe he's going to hold that title all the way up to Wembley Stadium? He's not. He is not. So I don't think it's the right move for MJF to drop the title to Darby Allin. I don't care if it's his hometown. I do not care. It's not the right move. It's not. If anything, it could actually garner MJF more heat as a heel if he beat Darby Allin in his hometown. There's a story in and of itself. Darby Allin let his people down. And now Darby Allin has to climb his way back up. After getting this opportunity and squandering it. It's a good story to tell. And now actually have more people believing in Darby Allin rather than just having him win the world title for just a cheap pop. Again, I like Darby, but again, it makes no sense for him to win the title in this instance. It's not the right time. It's not the right time. Continuing on with Dynasty, we had FTR versus Adam Copeland and Christian Cage. FTR actually ended up getting the win and retaining their AEW tag team titles. We had the TNT title gauntlet, the Casino Gauntlet for the TNT title. As, of course, if you guys do not know, Kyle Fletcher is actually out injured and he's going to be out for a couple of months. Kevin Knight actually defeated Daniel Garcia and all the other men that were involved in that gauntlet. So Kevin Knight is your brand new TNT champion. Tekla defeated Jamie Hayter for the AEW Women's World title. We had the Continental title as Jon Moxley faced off against Will Ospreay. I personally thought that this match was going to be a bloodbath. It actually was not. Some of the spots that took place in this match, they sold themselves, man. Will Ospreay is insane. I know some people were not happy with that one spot where Jon Moxley essentially hits a DDT or the Death Rider or the Paradigm Shift, whatever you want to call it. And Will Ospreay immediately stands up and hits the Hidden Blade. I know a lot of people did not like that spot. I personally did not mind it. But at the same time, I'm not going to crap on the people that hated that spot because I totally understand where they're coming from. This was not a bad match whatsoever. The pain that you saw in this match sold itself. That's one thing I will say. Do I think we will be getting another Jon Moxley versus Will Ospreay match? Yes. I do not think Will Ospreay needs the Continental title. The story regarding Will Ospreay is really Wembley Stadium. He is 100% going to be in the main event of Wembley Stadium. 100%. Against who? We do not know. Now, a lot of people were immediately thinking Kenny Omega. Clearly, I don't think that's going to be the case anytime soon. It's going to be MJF versus Will Ospreay because, again, and I talked about this when I talked about Darby Allin, MJF is the man. MJF is the top guy. MJF is the draw. MJF is the only star that they got. And you need to have your star main event your biggest show of the year. And Will Ospreay, doesn't have that mainstream crossover like an MJF, but he has the potential to. Will Ospreay versus MJF is going to be the main event of Wembley Stadium this year. It's going to be the main event of All in London. That's what it's going to be. And Will Ospreay is going to get his moment. But, of course, we have to shift our focus towards the Owen Hart Cup tournament because that's going to be taking place. And I do believe Will Ospreay will win the Owen Hart Cup tournament. Now, I also believe that Jon Moxley will be a part of that Owen Hart Cup tournament. I actually believe that this year's men's Owen Hart Cup tournament is going to be freaking stacked with main event level talent. And it's great that AEW throughout the past couple of months have been telling the story about everybody, that being the Swerves of the world, the Hangmans, the Will Ospreays, the Darby Allins, the Andrades going after MJF. They're all gunning after MJF. Now imagine all of them being a part of that one tournament to whoever wins faces off against MJF at Wembley Stadium. We could be seeing another Jon Moxley versus Will Ospreay match as either maybe one of the semifinal matches or the quarterfinal matches. We do not know. But it's something that you really need to take into consideration. I do believe eventually Will Ospreay will win the Owen Hart Cup tournament. I do believe Will Ospreay will move on to Wembley Stadium. It's clearly set in stone. Yes, Will Ospreay has wrestled in Wembley Stadium twice, but he's never wrestled in the main event. The two main events that we had at Wembley Stadium, the first one was Adam Cole versus MJF. And that was a phenomenal match. And the second one was Swerve Strickland versus Bryan Danielson. Will Ospreay was on the undercard for those two matches. This is going to be Will Ospreay's first main event at Wembley Stadium. So I do believe they will eventually score off once again in either the quarterfinals or the semifinals of the Owen Hart Cup tournament. But again, that's just my bold prediction, but I do believe they will wrestle again. We got the World Trios titles on the line as the conglomeration defeated the Dogs, and I believe Gabe Kidd suffered an injury, so that's kind of a bummer. And we had the world title on the line as the Devil, Maxwell Jacob Friedman, defeated the God of professional wrestling, Kenny by God Omega. This was a great match, a phenomenal main event. Again, this was just a knockdown, drag out, just traditional professional wrestling match. Everything about this match was great. This was like the perfect main event in a sense that you didn't need to do all these crazy ass shenanigans. You could just have the heel and the babyface going at it for the world championship. That's all you need. That's all you need, especially with the caliber of the talent of an MJF, especially the caliber of the talent of a Kenny Omega. That's all you needed. That is all you needed to sell me on a match like MJF versus Kenny Omega. The match was fantastic. Of course, Kenny Omega was not going to go over in this match. If you honestly believe that Kenny Omega was going to go over in this match, please stop watching wrestling because clearly MJF is the star of this entire promotion. But again, where does that lead MJF? Where does that actually no? Take that back. We already know where MJF is going to lead. He has a title match this Wednesday on Dynamite. Cross my fingers he doesn't drop the title to Darby Allin. We already discussed that. Where does Kenny Omega go? Where does Kenny Omega go from here? We have absolutely no idea. Now, again, there is the Owen Hart Cup tournament. Could he be a part of that Owen Hart Cup tournament? We're probably going to have to wait and see, but I do believe he will be a part of it. Think about all of the different match possibilities that we could be getting in that Owen Hart Cup tournament? Is Andrade going to be a part of it? Is Will Ospreay going to be a part of it? Is Jon Moxley going to be a part of it? Is Swerve going to be a part of it? I genuinely see that being the case, man. Everybody that was gunning after MJF is going to be a part of the men's side of the Owen Hart Cup tournament. That's what I see being the case. But overall, this was a great main event. Kenny looked great. The story that they told, the psychology that they told was fantastic. The reversals, some of the spots that we saw were fantastic as well. The pile driver through the table. In the end, MJF got the win, and he is still the AEW World Champion. He is still the AEW World Champion. And now we are on our road to Double or Nothing in May. Okay, overall thoughts on Dynasty. Dynasty was not a bad pay-per-view. I thoroughly enjoyed the show. Was it a long pay-per-view? Yes, it was a long pay-per-view. But at the same time, it wasn't as long as, let's say, Revolution last year or any other AEW pay-per-view last year. Or like Revolution last month or any other AEW pay-per-view last year. There was a little bit of balance over there. There was. But at the same time, was it the best? Like, was it the greatest AEW pay-per-view of all time? No, it was not. But it got the job done. Overall, I definitely enjoyed AEW Dynasty, and it was a phenomenal show. This is the WrestleHavoc Podcast on this Monday, April 13th, 2026. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this edition of the podcast. If you guys want to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc Podcast channel, I would greatly appreciate you guys do that. Also, if you guys are watching on WNN platforms, I thank you guys so much for watching me on those platforms as well. Okay, let's talk about our next topic. And our next topic is, of course, TNA. Total Nonstop Action Wrestling. Total Nonstop Action Wrestling, man. They always appear to amaze me sometimes, man. Like they get away with a lot of crap. They get away with a lot of stupidity as well. They were definitely in the hot seat this past week, and it sparked a lot, and I mean a lot of conversation about who's really running TNA. You know, TNA has a higher master, that being the WWE, but that's another story for another time, even though we're still going to talk about it on this very show. But they were definitely in the hot seat in the midst of them, of course, having their big Rebellion pay-per-view, which honestly, I did not care about what went down on that show. Apparently, EC3, Ethan Carter III, made his return at the Rebellion show. But TNA is banning or pulling a lot of their talent from working AEW talent on indie shows. This all started a week ago. I'm reading this first story on F4WOnline.com. Of course, these are the people of the Wrestling Observer, the Dave Meltzers and the Brian Alvarez's. There is a growing concern that TNA Wrestling may be pulling back on allowing its talent to work with wrestlers from other promotions at independent shows. Multiple reports on Wednesday indicate that TNA's Moose has been pulled from Maple Leaf Pro's Multiverse event on Friday, April 18th, and that changes could be made on other shows during WrestleMania week as well. Moose is said to have received approval from TNA Wrestling to appear before the company later reversed that decision. It is believed that he would have worked with talent from another promotion, likely AEW. Mike Johnson from PW Insider wrote that, quote-unquote, the rumblings in recent days suggest that TNA has had a change of heart about allowing its wrestlers to work with talent from other promotions. Fightful Select published a similar report Wednesday, also stating that Moose has been pulled from the Maple Leaf show after previously being approved. According to Fightful, sources familiar with the situation believe it is possible TNA could move towards not permitting its contracted wrestlers to face AEW talent at all. The report also noted that Nick Nemeth is pushing for his scheduled match against AEW World Champion MJF at Creative Pro Wrestling's May 1st event to still take place. Spoiler alert, that match got canceled. Other matches scheduled for WrestleMania week featuring TNA and AEW talent include Leon Slater versus Ricochet at the Mark Hitchcock Memorial Super Show on April 16th. And by the way, that match did get canceled as well. Fightful added that people close to MLP, that being Scott D'Amore's promotion, indicated that TNA president Carlos Silva was unhappy. Now, keep in mind, this is just rumblings from what it looks like. And I know Fightful is reporting this, and Fightful is a credible source. But again, these are just kind of rumblings at this point. Carlos Silva was unhappy about AEW airing Collision opposite Impact last Thursday night due to NCAA basketball coverage. Moose previously said in an interview last September that he had been unable to work Maple Leaf Pro events due to the promotion's relationship with AEW. He stated this, and I quote, "I talk to Scott D'Amore at least once every other week, maybe once a month. He's doing great. He has his new Fed, Maple Leaf Pro, and they're doing awesome. I wish I could work for them, but you know how business is with the whole TNA thing. They have a relationship with AEW. We're in competition with AEW, so you know how that whole nonsense goes." Those comments were later pushed back on publicly by TNA president Carlos Silva, who wrote to Dave Meltzer, and he stated this, and I quote, "Thanks, Dave. Moose knows, and that is all good. Scott can call me anytime, and he knows that too." Okay. So this was before. This whole article came out before. First off, TNA pulled Nick Nemeth from his match against MJF, which, by the way, that whole Nick Nemeth and MJF match was essentially being built up around Busted Open Radio for like, I believe a couple of weeks or even months at that point. Also, this was before TNA pulled Leon Slater from his match against Ricochet. Now, I'm going to say this right here and right now, because clearly, if this is true, like, Carlos Silva's an idiot for this, but if Carlos Silva was upset at the fact that AEW was going head-to-head against TNA, I mean, if that is the reason as to why he's pulling talent from these shows, clearly he's in the wrong business. And clearly he has no idea what the hell he's doing. I mean, look, I have my doubts about that, but it's a very stupid reason to pull talent from shows. Now, that being said, AEW is guilty of the same thing as well. And I'm going to say this right here and right now, because look, I'm going to bash TNA a lot. I'm going to bash TNA a lot in this podcast, but at the same time, we also need to take into consideration that AEW as well is guilty of this very thing. You don't believe me? Ask Ricky Starks or Ricky Saints, whatever the hell you want to call him. Ask Ricky Starks. He showed up at the GCW show at American Dream, surprisingly. I was there at that show. Got a really good promo. And this was during a time where AEW was actually benching Ricky Starks. They had no plans for Ricky Starks whatsoever. They just had him sit at home, collect a paycheck, and that is it. They didn't do anything with Ricky Starks, even though Ricky Starks wanted to be on the show. Then, right after that promo he cut on that GCW show at American Dream, he was going to be a part of a GCW show, I believe, the next month. And AEW pulled Ricky Starks out of that show because of comments that Effie stated on his podcast regarding Tony Khan's father, Shad Khan. Now, look, I totally understand Tony being upset about the comments that, Effie said about Shad Khan. I totally get it. I totally understand. But at the same time, you're pulling Ricky Starks, who, by the way, had nothing to do with that thing with Effie, and he's just wanting to work a wrestling show, an indie wrestling show, and you're pulling him out of that show. To me, it was utterly ridiculous and stupid. It was really stupid. But it is what it is. Now, that being said, AEW pays their talent handsomely. AEW talent has guaranteed contracts. They have guaranteed contracts. You're making this X amount of dollars when you're signed with us. TNA, on the other hand, correct me if I'm wrong, but the majority of TNA talent do not have a guaranteed contract. They're getting paid on a per appearance deal. Apparently. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's where the whole discussion of TNA not paying their talent properly comes to fruition. because MJF mentioned a lot about that. He mentioned a lot about TNA not paying their talents handsomely when he went on that crazy-ass rant on Busted Open Radio. And to be fair, he had every right to be upset because he was looking forward to, as well as Nick Nemeth, they were both looking forward to their match that they were going to have. And TNA all of a sudden just pulled out of that deal. Think about that. TNA signed on. They flat out, AEW and TNA signed and they gave approval for both the Ricochet and Leon Slater match and the MJF and Nick Nemeth match. They signed approval for those matches to take place on those indie shows. And ironically, TNA just pulled back out of that deal. Now, I do believe there were cross-promotional matches between TNA talent and AEW talent before. And what's crazy is that the TNA talent actually went over in that match. I believe Mercedes Moné, I believe she wrestled one of the TNA wrestlers, and she actually dropped one of her she dropped one of her titles to a TNA star. Correct me if I'm wrong. So if the whole argument is, oh, we do not want our talent to lose to AEW talent, I mean, that is absolutely ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous because you had your way before, but all of a sudden, knowing that you have the AEW World Champion going up against Nick Nemeth, who, by the way, yes, I know he is a current TNA wrestler, but at the same time, more people know him as Dolph Ziggler. If you have MJF versus Nick Nemeth, obviously MJF is going to go over because he is the world champion of the second largest wrestling promotion in the world. Like that's obviously like that's what we need to take into fruition right now. Like he is. But the fact that like if it's true and Carlos Silva is upset because of the fact that, you know, AEW went head to head against TNA. First off, that was not even an AEW decision. That was not even an AEW decision whatsoever. That was strictly a Warner Brothers Discovery decision because of the fact that March Madness is taking place or any other sports that are taking place. That's why they got preempted. And ironically, I believe Collision beat Impact in the ratings, which was expected. I mean, TNT is the larger network compared to AMC. AMC, yeah, it's a big network, but if you compare it to TNT, TNT is a much larger network. Obviously, Collision was going to beat them in the ratings, but still, that's not a part of the point. This had nothing to do with AEW going head to head against them because, again, it was out of AEW's control. And ironically, it's really shady to remove Leon Slater, who's wrestling Ricochet. And by the way, this is a memorial show. So, like, that's even worse, and it makes TNA look even worse. But both of those matches are not taking place, unfortunately. And it really does suck, man, because it really does affect the wrestlers. I mean, bro, wrestlers are, you know, they rely, especially TNA wrestlers, rely a lot on these indie shows. They really do. They rely a lot on these independent shows. And the fact that TNA just pulled them out of that like that is absolutely ridiculous. Now, there's another theory out there, and a lot of people are genuinely believing this, and actually, I believe this as well. Some people were even saying that this was probably not a TNA decision, rather that this was a WWE decision. And honestly, I genuinely believe that's actually the case. I genuinely believe that is actually the case. The reason why I say that is if you look at the WWE and TNA partnership, look, I'm not going to sit here and deny that the partnership hasn't done TNA wonders because it has. The partnership that TNA has had with WWE has benefited TNA greatly. But at the same time, think about this. Who was behind TNA getting that television deal with AMC? It was Nick Khan. And it was Nick Khan essentially helping TNA get that television deal. The AMC deal wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for Nick Khan. WWE is essentially helping out TNA in a sense, but at the same time, in exchange, they have to listen to the requests that WWE is giving TNA even though TNA is not owned by WWE, TNA is essentially, listening to everything that WWE is demanding them to do. And this is one of those instances. WWE is essentially TNA's higher power. WWE is the pimp, TNA is the hoe. That's the exact, excuse my language, but that's exactly what is going on. That is exactly what is going on. That's exactly what's going on, man. WWE is pulling these strings, unfortunately. And it's a damn shame. It is a shame, and it sucks. And it makes TNA look so bad in the process. It really does. It makes them look so bad in the process. It does. It's quite unfortunate, to say the least. But yeah, those are my thoughts on TNA. Continuing on with the WrestleHavoc podcast, of course, it is WrestleMania week. And at the top of this very episode, I talked about how WrestleMania week, we're not even going to call WrestleMania 42 WrestleMania 42. We're going to be calling this show Celebrity-Mania 42 because that is exactly what this show has become. Hell, that is exactly what WWE has become. Of course, we're going to be giving you guys the preview and predictions for this year's WrestleMania 42 taking place for the second consecutive year in a row. For the third time in its 40-plus year history in Las Vegas, but for the second consecutive year in a row, back-to-back years, WrestleMania has been in Las Vegas. We're going to be talking about WrestleMania 42, and we are going to be running down the entire card for you guys. One thing to note about WrestleMania 42 is, of course, we all know WWE has a deal with ESPN. And, of course, with that deal, you, the consumer, is able to pay $30 a month for a premium live event. Now, granted, you don't just get the PLE, you get all other ESPN-related content. One thing to note is that this year is going to be the first year that WrestleMania is going to be airing on the ESPN app. It's also, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, the first time that WrestleMania is going to be airing on linear television in some way, shape, or form. If you guys do not know, WrestleMania 42, both nights, Saturday and Sunday, will be airing their first hours, respectively, will be airing on ESPN Linear. So, WrestleMania Night 1, the first hour of WrestleMania Night 1 will be airing on not only the ESPN Unlimited app, but also ESPN 2. And Sunday's WrestleMania 42, that being Night 2 of WrestleMania, will be airing on the ESPN app, or on the regular ESPN network. What are my thoughts on this? Number one, I think it's pretty good for the consumer. If they don't have ESPN to watch it on linear. But again, it's only the first hour. I have my theories as to why this is happening. And really, my main theory is the fact that the relationship between WWE and ESPN is really not going as smooth as WWE or ESPN intended to be. I feel like on the ESPN side, they feel like they, in a way, overpaid for the WWE product. That's just my opinion. But if you guys, to be fair, this deal kind of came out of nowhere. After the Peacock deal was done for the PLEs, they went straight to ESPN. Everybody was talking about, hey, where are the pay-per-views going to go? And they ended up going on ESPN. But yeah, what are your thoughts on ESPN, the linear ESPN networks, having the first hours of WrestleMania? It's very interesting. It kind of tells really the ongoing saga between the relationship between WWE and ESPN. I feel like that relationship is kind of rocky at certain points, and I feel like ESPN believes that WWE hasn't really performed well in terms of their premium live events, or really didn't get the return on their investment. Because to be fair, again, how much money did ESPN pay WWE? Billions of dollars. But let's run down the WrestleMania 42 card. WrestleMania 42, of course, is going to be taking place at Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. Of course, originally this show was supposed to take place, and I constantly talk about this every week on the WrestleHavoc podcast. This show was originally supposed to take place in New Orleans, Louisiana. New Orleans, Louisiana. They had The Rock come out on a random episode of SmackDown announcing that WrestleMania was going to return to New Orleans for the third time in its history. Of course, New Orleans hosted WrestleMania 30. They also hosted WrestleMania 34. And they were going to host WrestleMania 42. Well, that was no longer going to be the case, I believe, like a month or two later, as WWE pulled out of the deal and essentially decided to go with Las Vegas because they got more money and WrestleMania 41 was deemed a success. Now, with the ongoing, stories of ticket sales for WrestleMania 42 not being so good, I'm going to point this out. I'm going to point this right here and right now. Just because ticket sales are not doing well for WrestleMania doesn't mean the show is going to be a failure. Let me repeat that. Just because tickets are not selling well for WrestleMania doesn't mean that WrestleMania is going to be a failure. I 110% believe that this show is going to be a success, and it is. You are a fool if you think that WrestleMania this year is not going to be a success. You are a fool. Because the name brand of WrestleMania holds a lot of value. The show could be crap. The show can be good. The show could be crap. The show will still be garnered as a financial success, and it will be. But at the same time, the quality of the show, a lot of fans could take into account that the show itself could just act as a failure. But we're gonna talk about that. We're going to run through the card for WrestleMania 42. We're going to talk about, of course, WrestleMania Saturday and WrestleMania Sunday. We're going to start off with night one of WrestleMania 42. Of course, in the first match of night one of WrestleMania, we got a 6-man tag team match. We got Logan Paul, Austin Theory, and IShowSpeed taking on the Usos and LA Knight. Yes, IShowSpeed going to be involved in a match, ironically. Now, granted, of course, we've been seeing IShowSpeed recently on WWE television. Everybody remembers what happened at the Royal Rumble last year when Braun Breaker speared the living hell out of IShowSpeed, and that was pretty entertaining to see. I assume we're probably going to be getting a similar moment with IShowSpeed, but not with Braun Breaker because Braun Breaker is out. But I do think that the Usos and LA Knight are going to go over. I do not think that, the heels are going to go over at this stage of the game, but that is just me. But again, this is one of those matches that people are just interested in the celebrities. We got the unsanctioned match. We got Jacob Fatu taking on Drew McIntyre. Now, the original one of the original matches pinned or planned for WrestleMania 42 was Jacob Fatu versus Drew McIntyre versus Cody Rhodes for the WWE Championship, or there were multiple different plans in terms of what WWE was going to do in terms of Cody Rhodes for WrestleMania. It was either this triple threat match that we were going to be having, Cody Rhodes, Jacob Fatu, and Drew McIntyre, another match between Cody Rhodes and Drew McIntyre, which I know damn well a lot of fans, including myself, did not want to see, or Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns. None of those matches are taking place, but we are getting a one-on-one match between Jacob Fatu and Drew McIntyre. I see Jacob Fatu getting the win. I don't see Drew McIntyre going over, but then again, crazier things have happened. Now, one thing I will say is that both of these matches on night one of WrestleMania, they are both going to be taking place on the ESPN2 linear network as well. So be on the lookout for that. If you guys do not have the ESPN app, you guys watch it on free. You guys can watch it on free TV. Now, moving on with the night one card, we got the women's tag team title fatal four-way match, as we got the champions, Nia Jax and Lash Legend, taking on Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss, taking on Bayley and Lyra Valkyria, taking on the Bella Twins. Yes, the Bella Twins are reunited for this match. Personally, I'm not really as excited about this. It was great seeing Brie Bella at the Royal Rumble. Not the biggest fan of Nikki Bella, but that's just me. Again, the Bellas are the Bellas. They are legends, but at the same time, I'm not really interested in seeing them. My prediction, I actually think that Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss are actually going to get the win. We got the women's Intercontinental title on the line as AJ Lee will be defending her newly won title against Becky Lynch. AJ Lee, you guys already know my thoughts on AJ Lee. I'm a big fan of AJ Lee, but at the same time, I feel like her return run has been kind of a flop, simply because of the fact that she hasn't been on television for a long period of time. I don't even want to say a long period of time. So like she barely is on TV, which really does suck. Now it's granted, now it's WrestleMania season, so she's been appearing on WWE TV more often. But the fact that she is the Women's Intercontinental Champion goes to show you how much WWE actually cares about the Women's Intercontinental title compared to the Women's US title. Like the Women's Intercontinental title has more prestige than the Women's US title, in my opinion. WWE, in my opinion, just does not care about the Women's US title and the direction of that title. Again, both of these titles are useless, but at least one is actually being treated with importance, but the other one isn't. In my opinion, I do see AJ Lee retaining her title, and I do think this will be a pretty good match. We got Seth Rollins taking on Gunther. Finally, they've given Gunther something to do after he retired the phenomenal AJ Styles. Of course, this is Seth Rollins' match after returning at the Elimination Chamber. Now, one thing I will say is originally this match, I believe, was supposed to be Seth Rollins versus Braun Breaker. But Braun Breaker suffered his injury, and he's going to be out for a significant amount of time. So we're no longer going to be getting that Seth Rollins taking on, that Seth Rollins versus Braun Breaker match. But I will say, this is not a bad match. Like, the match itself sounds very fun and definitely, interesting. I feel like this match is definitely going to be one of the show stealers, especially for night one of WrestleMania. And I do think Seth Rollins, he again, I've always said this about Gunther. You can put Gunther against anybody. He will make his opponents look good. And I think Seth Rollins, will look good in this match as well. But I do see Seth Rollins going over in this match. But at the same time, a part of me kind of wants Gunther to really go over as well, because I feel like WWE hasn't really capitalized well on, Gunther, especially after retiring Goldberg. Well, no, take that back. They capitalized on Gunther well after retiring Goldberg and retiring John Cena, but after retiring AJ Styles, I feel like Gunther hasn't really, I feel like WWE hasn't really capitalized on Gunther just yet. I think he will get there, but I mean, we got to start doing more, things with Gunther. But I do believe that Seth Rollins is going to go over, but I wouldn't be surprised if Gunther went over as well. We got the Women's World title on the line as Stephanie Vaquer will be defending her title against the winner of the Women's Royal Rumble this year, Liv Morgan. One of those matches I'm not really interested in, but I do think the match is going to be great. What WWE has done with Stephanie Vaquer has been nothing but phenomenal, no pun intended. WWE clearly sees the value in Stephanie Vaquer, and clearly she is the bigger star in this match, in my opinion. No shade against Liv Morgan. I do think Liv Morgan is a star. Now, granted, if you compare both, I do believe Stephanie Vaquer, as of right now, is the bigger star. But out of everybody in the women's division, clearly the biggest star in the women's division is Rhea Ripley. But in terms of like both women, I do think Stephanie Vaquer is the bigger star. And honestly, I feel like she's going to retain this title. As much as I love Liv Morgan, I think Stephanie Vaquer, there's a lot more possibilities that you would do with Stephanie Vaquer as the champion. Not only that, we've seen Liv Morgan as the women's champion already. So like, I kind of don't want to see another Liv Morgan title run. That's just me. But I do think Stephanie Vaquer will retain her Women's World Championship. And I think the match is going to be great. And then, of course, we got the undisputed WWE title match as Randy Orton will be taking on the defending champion, Cody Rhodes. Now, this whole thing is going to be a separate topic after we run down WrestleMania. But as you guys all know, Randy Orton is paired with Pat McAfee. And trust me, I'm going to talk about a lot. I'm going to talk a lot about that because clearly it sparked a lot of conversation on social media as to why they paired Pat McAfee with Randy Orton. Really, what is their motive? This makes no sense. I'm going to say this right here and right now. I'm going to try to critique this as nicely as possible before I go insane as I get into the Pat McAfee and Randy Orton, topic. But this match could have sold itself, with Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton. You did not need Pat McAfee for this. You did not need Jelly Roll for this. All you needed was Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton. That is it. Now, in terms of my predictions, and again, we will get back into this discussion because this is our main topic. Pat McAfee, Randy Orton is our main topic of this very episode. Now, who's going to be winning this match? There's a very high possibility that we may have a situation in which Pat McAfee, in a way, pulls a Travis Scott and costs Cody Rhodes the WWE title. That's my prediction. I genuinely believe WWE has the cojones to do something like that. And I feel like WWE, like themselves, like do not care about what the fans think at this point. They're like, you know what? Screw it. Let's have Pat McAfee screw over Randy Orton. I genuinely believe that's going to be the case. I wouldn't be surprised if Cody retained. But honestly, knowing WWE, the outcome of this match is most likely going to be Pat McAfee, interfering in this match and costing Cody Rhodes the title. Or we may have a scenario in which Pat McAfee interferes in the match, then we get Jelly Roll involved, then they both fight, and then the story no longer becomes Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton. The story becomes Jelly Roll and Pat McAfee. That's essentially WWE's motive right here. This whole match, is not based around the history of Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton. This whole match is based around Pat McAfee and Jelly Roll. Because if you guys don't know, the rumored main event for Backlash in May is Cody Rhodes and Jelly Roll taking on Randy Orton and Pat McAfee. That is basically the rumored main event for Backlash. But we will get more in depth about that because I have a lot to say about the Pat McAfee partnership. But I do believe Randy Orton will win the title because of help by Pat McAfee. Moving on, WrestleMania Sunday. Honestly, I genuinely believe that this is the better card of the two nights. It just has a lot more excitement behind it. We got the Intercontinental title ladder match on the line. The Intercontinental title is going to be on the line in a ladder match. I like that. It gives me, honestly, we need to have ladder matches like this. I know I've always advocated for WWE to bring back the Money in the Bank ladder match for WrestleMania, because if you guys do not know, and you guys should know, or for all you youngsters out there, the Money in the Bank ladder match originated at WrestleMania. That used to be a WrestleMania exclusive. Now it became its own pay-per-view to me, which to me makes no sense. But it's one of the big five, even though I don't believe in the big five. I believe in the big four. I don't really believe in the big five. But it's a big five pay-per-view, so that's no longer going to be the case. The Intercontinental title ladder match, honestly, there are some instances where WWE has done Intercontinental title ladder matches. Of course, WrestleMania 31 comes to mind. Of course, not just multi-man ladder matches. Of course, they also had Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon at WrestleMania 10. The fact that they're having an Intercontinental title ladder match, I dig. Not only that, this is actually going to be on the first hour on ESPN, on the linear ESPN network, which to me is actually great as well. Like, if you really want to hook viewers in, this is the perfect match to really hook viewers in. Not only that, we got Obafemi versus Brock Lesnar. Now, first off, I completely forgot about my prediction for this match, but we got Penta, who is the current champion, taking on Javon Evans, taking on Dragon Lee, taking on the Judgment Day's JD McDonough, taking on Rusev, taking on Rey Mysterio. Number one, I think Penta's going to retain. Number two, it sucks that Phoenix is not in this, but it is what it is. I think we're going to be seeing some crazy spots, especially involving Javon Evans, because we all know Javon Evans is literally one of the best in-ring performers out there right now. Him and Leon Slater, like both of those guys, both of those young talents are really like upcoming prospects if we really think about it. Leon Slater, of course, is doing his thing in TNA. Javon Evans is really was doing his thing in NXT. Now he's a part of the main roster. But Javon Evans definitely has a big future. And I definitely do see Javon Evans doing a lot in this match. And he's definitely going to be the MVP in this match. And everybody talks about Dragon Lee, JD McDonough, Rusev, Rey Mysterio, or even Penta. And look, I think all those guys are going to look great. But if there's anybody that's going to shine in this match, it's going to be Javon Evans. 100% it's going to be Javon Evans because, again, I feel like WWE has, I feel like the machine wants to get behind somebody like Javon Evans. And he's still a young guy. And he's definitely going to be the MVP in this match. Do I think he's going to be winning? No, I don't see him winning. But I do think he's going to be the MVP in this match. The second match, we got Obafemi versus Brock Lesnar. Another match that I'm definitely really excited about. And there's only one logical outcome in this match. One logical outcome, and that is Obafemi getting the win. Why do I say that? Number one, Brock Lesnar is, I believe, now it's not really official, but the rumor right now is that Brock Lesnar is going to be retiring at SummerSlam. Like, that's the rumor, because SummerSlam is going to be taking place in Minneapolis, Minnesota this year, and that is the hometown of Brock Lesnar. Number two, if you, again, you know, this is the perfect first hour for WrestleMania, and the fact that this match is taking place on ESPN again, if you really want to hook viewers in, like, you know, these are the two matches to hook viewers in. Obafemi versus Brock Lesnar, I think, is going to be a quick match. This is a bold prediction. I actually think Obafemi and Brock Lesnar is going to be a quick match. I don't see this match being not even 10 minutes. I think this match is going to be quick and easy. Both are going to have their back and forth. Like, if there's any match that I can compare this match to, it's Goldberg versus Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania 33. That match, like, at least lasted either 10 minutes or probably slightly less than 10 minutes, or maybe a little bit more than 10 minutes. But right from the get-go, and that match was almost 10 years ago. Almost 10 years ago. Right now, I believe it was 8 years ago that match took place. But from the moment the bell rang, both Goldberg and Lesnar, like, went crazy at each other. Like, back and forth, spears, F5s, like, it was insane. It was insane. And it was easily one of the best matches of that year's WrestleMania in Orlando, Florida. I do believe that this match is able to, I actually believe that this match is going to be close to that match, in a sense, where it's going to be a short match, but it's going to be a short match that is effective. And there's only one logical outcome. And that logical outcome is Obafemi going over. That is the only logical outcome in this match. Obafemi going over in this match. So I do believe Obafemi will go over, and he will, you know, give the upset and beat Brock Lesnar, because clearly you're not going to have Brock Lesnar beat the up-and-coming Obafemi. You're just not going to have that. It makes no sense. Obafemi is the newer guy on the roster. You would want Brock Lesnar to put over somebody like Obafemi. So, yeah. We got the U.S. title on the line as Sami Zayn will be defending his title against Trick Williams. Sami Zayn, man. A lot of fans are booing Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn hate is real. I'm still a big fan of Sami Zayn. A lot of people are saying he's probably going to turn heel. We also got Trick Williams, who is, let's be honest with ourselves, relatively over with the audience. Everybody loves that whoop that trick. Okay? Everybody loves that whoop that trick. I mean, the only thing you need is Booker T on commentary saying, yeah, oh yeah, man. Like, that Trick Williams is over. Do I think he's going to pull the upset? I have no idea. I don't think Trick Williams is going to get the win, unfortunately. Even though I would love to see that being the case, I would love for that to be the case. Like, I don't think it's going to happen. I think Sami Zayn is going to go over. And honestly, you know, that I just see Sami Zayn go. I know it's going to upset a lot of people, but I do see Sami Zayn going over. We got the Demon, Finn Balor, taking on Dominic Mysterio. Of course, the Judgment Day, or Finn Balor, is going up against Dominic Mysterio. And, of course, it's going to be the Demon version of Finn Balor. And I think this match is going to be great, man. Of course, Dominic Mysterio has had many moments at WrestleMania, primarily last year. That moment last year where he won the Intercontinental title, that finish was insane. I reacted like crazy. But Dominic Mysterio, man, he's been doing a lot of great things, and I think he's going to have a great match against Finn Balor, man. I think a fantastic match against Finn Balor. And actually, I believe Finn Balor is going to go over in this match as well. I genuinely see Finn Balor getting the win in this match. And me personally, you know, as much as I like Dominic, I think you got to give the nod to Finn Balor. I feel like WWE hasn't really done a lot with Finn Balor, with him being a part of the Judgment Day and now no longer being a part of the Judgment Day. I feel like WWE really needs to really think about what they want to do with Finn Balor, because Finn Balor, in my opinion, is, I don't want to say the total package, no pun intended. You know, I mentioned Lex Luger right there, but, you know, Finn Balor is one of those guys that can be a destined main eventer, and if WWE just gives him the ball, he can just run with it. You know what I'm saying? That's just me, though, but my pick, I believe the Demon will get the win. We got the women's title on the line in a match that I'm not really excited about, and in a match that a lot of people initially thought, oh my God, both of these women actually hate each other, including myself. Jade Cargill will be defending her title against Rhea Bloody Ripley. The build for this match, as you guys all know, has been kind of lackluster. I could care less about what was going on in this match. Honestly, if you really think about it, the gist of this whole match was basically, I'm stronger than you, I'm faster than you, all that stuff. That was basically the whole gist of Jade Cargill versus Rhea Ripley, and really, with the whole build in that match. It's no secret Jade Cargill is still relatively green, but I understand as to why they put the women's title on her. I understand as to why they put the women's title on her. If you look at somebody like Jade Cargill, again, is somebody who is marketable. If you look at her physique, she has the makings of a star. But at the same time, Rhea Ripley is already that star. And honestly, at this point, whether those stories are true or not about Jade Cargill and Rhea Ripley not really liking each other, at the end of the day, all that hype is kind of non-existent anymore. The build for this match, again, has been kind of lackluster. I honestly could care less about what's going on here, but if I were to pick somebody to go over, I believe Rhea Ripley is going to get the win. And in the main event, the true main event of WrestleMania 42, the real main event, CM Punk is actually going to be in the last match. No, not the main event of night 1. No, the main event of night 2, the real main event. CM Punk will be coming in as the World Heavyweight Champion, defending his title against the Tribal Chief, the head of the table, the one, Roman Reigns, the longest reigning champion in WWE history, or at least in the modern era. And that includes CM Punk as well. This match was built fantastically. I don't care what anybody says. The segments that we've been getting between both Roman Reigns and CM Punk have been nothing but phenomenal work. Like, everything about the build for this match was perfect. Aside from a few hiccups. Some people were saying CM Punk, really kind of owned Roman Reigns in a lot of those back and forth segments. And I could understand where people are coming from. But at the same time, the inclusion of the Usos and, CM Punk really taking things personally really ramped up this feud to another level. But it wasn't until CM Punk cut his pipe bomb promo last week on Raw where really things started to get more interesting, because they in a way, they kind of incorporated all the stuff that was happening with Pat McAfee and Randy Orton on SmackDown into this. What do I mean by that? Well, he calls Pat McAfee. He talks about TKO raising the ticket prices, and he literally looks in the camera and says lower ticket prices. And I'm watching this and I'm like, it's funny how you got somebody like CM Punk telling his boss to lower ticket prices, yet you get a paycheck by the very same people you criticize. Ironically, that was what Roman Reigns said in his recent promo last night on Raw. Ironically, that is exactly what he said. And he basically just buried CM Punk in that recent promo this past Monday. I'm talking about last night. You are essentially critiquing the people that pay you money. And look, Pat McAfee said the same thing, and he ain't lying when he says it. Why are you critiquing, like, CM Punk at the end of the day? And look, I'm not hating on CM Punk, but at the same time, I'm not blinded by fandom. A lot of people are blinded by fandom. They're too afraid to admit that CM Punk is an actual hypocrite. Because let's be honest with ourselves, he is a hypocrite. As much as I like CM Punk, as much as I like Phil Brooks, I'm not afraid to admit that CM Punk is a hypocrite, because he is. He is a hypocrite. He's saying lower ticket prices, yet you get a paycheck from TKO. If anything, you'd get free tickets. You wouldn't have to pay a dime for them. So what does it matter to you? What does it matter to you, CM Punk? That's just me, though. A lot of the things that Roman said are very true. A lot of the things that Pat McAfee said even though they're kind of cringeworthy, is very true. Now, that being said, who's going to win this match? Well, this is an ongoing story that not a lot of people are talking about, but Roman Reigns' contract, I believe, is up right after WrestleMania. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I believe his contract is up right after or a couple days after WrestleMania. I do not think Roman Reigns is going to go over in this match. I do believe that this match is going to have a clean finish. Maybe there's going to be some shenanigans. Maybe the Usos are going to get involved. We're going to have to wait and see. We're going to have to wait and see in the match itself. But I don't see Roman Reigns winning the World Heavyweight Championship. Why? Again, Roman Reigns' contract is about to be up. I don't think he's going straight to Hollywood. I think he's probably going to re-sign a new deal with WWE. But at the same time, if you look at Roman Reigns' schedule, I don't think it would make much sense for Roman Reigns to win the World Heavyweight title and just disappear for like 3 months and then come back as the World Heavyweight. Come back, still the champion, You're essentially holding the title hostage, and that is what WWE dealt with. Not just with Roman Reigns, especially in the later portion of his historic 1,000-plus day title run. That is an issue that WWE ran to with Brock Lesnar on numerous occasions, and I don't think WWE wants to deal with something like that. I do believe CM Punk is going to go over in this match. I do. Some people are creating the perception as to maybe CM Punk is maybe going to turn heel. WWE loves their moments, and honestly, a crazy moment would be CM Punk turning heel. Ironically, ever since CM Punk returned to wrestling in 2021, we have never seen CM Punk as a heel in his recent run, ever since he returned to wrestling in 2021. It's been almost 5 years at this point, and CM Punk has always been a babyface. Yeah, he would get booed on numerous occasions, especially in AEW. Like whenever he would go to Long Island during his feud with MJF, he got booed in Long Island. Or during Collision, sometimes he would get booed, sometimes he would get cheered. He had those mixed reactions. But people still love CM Punk because he is still CM Punk. Now, in terms of the outcome, I do believe CM Punk will retain his title. Question is he going to win it clean? Is he going to have help? Or is he going to turn heel? We do not know. A lot of people are speculating that CM Punk may turn heel. Honestly, it would make sense because, as you guys all know, during the build between Roman Reigns and CM Punk, in a way, kind of got a little salty about some of the things that Roman Reigns said about CM Punk. Like, you're just old. CM Punk snapped when he called him old. He snapped. We're going to have to wait and see, but this is the best possible main event for this year's WrestleMania. A WrestleMania that is kind of lackluster at the end of the day. It's a lackluster WrestleMania. Does that mean the show is guaranteed to fail? No. Because I think WWE at the end of the day will deliver with this WrestleMania. I actually believe they will deliver. We have many instances across both WWE and AEW where we see a pay-per-view and we're like, oh, this pay-per-view is going to suck because they didn't build it up. They didn't build it up really well. And then we come to the show and the show ends up being one of the best shows of the year. A pure example of this, I have two examples. Number one, All Out 2023. That was a week after the first AEW All In. That was a week after the first AEW All In. And the show was built horribly. But that ended up being one of the best pay-per-views, not only in AEW history, but, of the year of 2023. Another example is WWE Evolution last year. Now, that show, again, was another show that was built horribly. And the only reason as to why that show was a thing was because of the fact that WWE wanted to go head-to-head against AEW All In. Now, granted, they didn't directly go head-to-head against All In because AEW actually moved their show up in start times. But right after All In was over, there was, of course, Saturday night's main event. And I believe the next night was Evolution. Correct me if I'm wrong. But once WWE had the Evolution show, that ended up being one of the best pay-per-views of 2025. I do believe, especially with the second night, WrestleMania is going to knock it out of the park. That first night, I don't know. But that second night, I'm not going to lie. I'm actually more excited about night 2 than I am about night 1. I'm being brutally honest. That's just my opinion. But yeah, those are my thoughts on WrestleMania 42. Moving on, let's talk about our final topic, Pat McAfee. As you guys all know, of course, the main event of night 1 of WrestleMania is Pat McAfee versus Randy Orton. And a lot of people are upset about this. And honestly, I do not blame them because I was upset about it too. Pat McAfee, of course, well, Randy Orton won the Elimination Chamber. He won the Elimination Chamber and the main event was set. Randy Orton versus Cody Rhodes for the WWE title. And that was going to be the main event of night 1 of WrestleMania. Now, I will say, the heel turn from Randy Orton was off the chain. It was. It was 100%. It was off the freaking chain. Everything about that heel turn was fantastic. If they had kept it at that, this match would have been fine as the main event of night 1. If they had kept it at that and did not need to include Jelly Roll or later on down the road Pat McAfee, this match would have been fine. This is my biggest problem with Pat McAfee joining. Number 1, it's Pat McAfee. And again, I have no shade against Pat McAfee personally. I think Pat McAfee is great at what he does. His work on color commentary with Michael Cole is bar none one of the best announced team combinations in recent years. Not of all time, but in recent years. I love the chemistry between Pat McAfee and Michael Cole. The main reason as to why they paired Pat McAfee with Randy Orton, number 1, and I'm going to say this right here and right now, it makes no sense. Because Randy Orton is a 14-time world champion. As a character, Randy Orton does not need somebody like Pat McAfee. He doesn't. The decision of pairing Pat McAfee with Randy Orton was not a Triple H decision, and I don't care what anybody says. That was not a Triple H or Paul Levesque decision. That was a strict order from the higher-ups at TKO/Endeavor. That was an edict from, of course, Ari Emanuel, Mark Shapiro, those guys, these executives at TKO. They asked for this to go down. For the third straight year in a row, TKO essentially is sabotaging the main event, or one of the main events, because the last 2 years it was the actual main event. But they're sabotaging the main event for the third time, or one of the main events, for the third year in a row for WrestleMania. The first year, of course, was Rock incorporating himself in the match against Roman Reigns. And basically, after Cody Rhodes, think about this, after Cody Rhodes won the Royal Rumble, he was guaranteed a shot at the WWE title against Roman Reigns. The Rock all of a sudden comes in, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to take your spot. And he did, which caused a lot of backlash. And the term Cody Crybabies were born. WWE got so much backlash that it birthed the Final Boss. And the weeks leading up to WrestleMania 40 were some of the best weeks leading up to any WrestleMania of all time. That build was bar none. It was crazy. And of course, we had the tag team match as Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins took on Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. Another, thing I like to mention is that I like to kind of view that match as like a tribute to the main event of the first WrestleMania, because the main event of the very first WrestleMania was Hulk Hogan and Mr. T taking on Paul Orndorff and Roddy Piper. That was a tag team match. And I feel like that was them kind of paying tribute to the very first WrestleMania main event. That's just me. But that we had that match, and we had the heels going over, which led to a lot of adversity that Cody Rhodes was facing. And then, of course, we had the Avengers Endgame style ending where everybody comes and interferes left and right, overbooked to hell. Cody Rhodes wins the WWE title, and he finishes his story. Everybody went home happy. And then we had last year. The main event was going to be Cody Rhodes versus John Cena. John Cena, of course, turned heel, joined up with The Rock at the Elimination Chamber and Travis Scott. John Cena says he's going to ruin wrestling. Fast forward to WrestleMania now. I actually was live. I was live reacting to WrestleMania. And I've stated this when I was watching WrestleMania right after that match last year. The match itself was not bad. If anything, it was not the worst thing I've ever seen. I've seen way worse. And I'm going to go as far as to say I actually marked out for Travis Scott. And if you watch footage of me marking out for Travis Scott, like looking back, I kind of regret it. I kind of regret it. I'm being real. But, and the reason why I say I'm marked out, because this is a guilty pleasure of mine. I'm sorry. Fiend is not that bad of a song, okay? Some days I just listen to Fiend, okay? Fiend. I know a lot of people hate that song, but I kind of dig it. I ain't gonna lie. But looking back, and I've stated this actually on that very live stream. You can go back and watch on my main channel, WrestleHavoc. They made Cody Rhodes look like a chump so bad in that match. They literally had Cody Rhodes hold on to the belt, and he had the opportunity to hit John Cena in the face with the belt, and he was like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. Meanwhile, I'm like, bro, this guy turned his back on you, and you have all this anger and frustration. You have the opportunity to hit Cody Rhodes with the belt. Who cares? Everybody knows you're, in a sense, doing the right thing. You don't hit him with the belt because he's like, oh, no, I respect him too much, blah, blah, blah. They made Cody Rhodes look so bad in that match that they eventually had Travis Scott essentially cost Cody Rhodes of the WWE title and had John Cena win. That's exactly what happened. And, oh, yeah, by the way, The Rock did not show up. And then he shows up on Pat McAfee's show the next day saying, oh, yeah, the only reason why I was at the Elimination Chamber was because Ari Emanuel wanted me to go there because he wanted to boost ticket sales for the Elimination Chamber. That is the only reason as to why The Rock showed up. And why do I say TKO sabotaged the booking of WrestleMania? Well, The Rock is a board member of TKO. He knew damn well if he really wanted to make that moment stand out, he should have showed up at WrestleMania, and he chose not to show up at WrestleMania. That is exactly what happened. Now, fast forward to this year, TKO is essentially sabotaging one of the main events. Not the actual main event, but one of the main events of this year's WrestleMania. Thank God they're not sabotaging Roman Reigns and CM Punk, because they'd be very foolish to do that. They would be very foolish to do that. But they're essentially sacrificing a good story that could be told between Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton, who, by the way, both of them have history as being a part of Legacy. It was Randy Orton who was the leader, Cody Rhodes, and Ted DiBiase Jr. Ted DiBiase Jr., who, by the way, a lot of people speculated to be one of the mystery callers, or the mystery caller, I should say. And it very well still could be the case. We could get a return from Ted DiBiase Jr. Now, why am I mentioning Ted DiBiase Jr.? Well, he was acquitted of all of his criminal charges. And also, Ted DiBiase Jr., there was a video that was leaking in the internet saying that, the 19th, and basically teasing a return to WrestleMania. And the guy in that quote-unquote live stream was like, oh, are you talking to Randy Orton, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I don't know if it's a right move in bringing in Ted DiBiase Jr., but knowing TKO, they're the types of people that would do it. They don't care. But what's my whole point? The inclusion of Pat McAfee is easily one of the stupidest decisions I've ever seen WWE do. And WWE has a history of making really stupid decisions. Sacrificing a long-term story, a great story that you can tell between the teacher and the student. Randy Orton being the teacher and Cody Rhodes being the student. They sacrificed that whole great story that they were able to tell in favor of a celebrity encounter between Jelly Roll and Pat McAfee. And this was a strict demand by TKO to incorporate Pat McAfee into this. Why? Because Ari Emanuel believes that Pat McAfee is the next Sylvester Stallone. If you guys don't know, Endeavor/WMEING is a talent agency. If you guys did not know that, Endeavor is a talent agency. And of course, Ari Emanuel is very high up on somebody like Pat McAfee. What's even worse about them incorporating Pat McAfee were the promos that Pat McAfee was actually cutting on SmackDown. Why? Why were they so bad? Well, number one, Pat McAfee as a heel sounds so cringe. He doesn't even feel like a heel. I feel like he's playing a character. I don't feel like Pat McAfee is actually acting like Pat McAfee, ironically. Like, I genuinely believe like Pat McAfee is acting like a so-called heel in this match. I don't really see Pat McAfee as a heel, ironically, which is fucking crazy. Excuse my language. But some of the things that Pat McAfee said were baffling to me, and it genuinely reminded me of some of the stuff WCW would do in 2000. Now, I know the term WCW in 2000, like a lot of people compare like AEW showing the CM Punk footage is something that WCW would have probably done in the year 2000. I genuinely believe that would be the case, yes. But why am I comparing that instance, the Pat McAfee and Randy Orton pairing to something that WCW would do in 2000? Well, if you listen to Pat McAfee speak, he's talking about why is WrestleMania not selling, all these tickets? Why are there still tickets available for WrestleMania? All that stuff. Why are ticket prices so high? Blah, blah, blah. WCW, if you guys do not know, was synonymous with pulling back the curtain a little bit too much. Not even a little bit too much, way too much, to the point where you the viewer did not know what was real or what was fake. Like, I remember I was actually recently watching The Last Thunder before that reboot Nitro, April 10th, 2000. And throughout the majority of that episode of Thunder, they had interviews with a lot of young WCW wrestlers backstage asking about their thoughts on Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo coming back to join forces together in WCW. I swear to God, you had a lot of these wrestlers saying, oh yeah, it's going to get WCW back on track, essentially telling the viewer that WCW sucked as a product throughout the last year. So with Pat McAfee essentially saying on their very show, on their very own show, why isn't WrestleMania sold out? All these ticket prices are so high, man, because you people, all you fans are too broke. You guys can't even afford tickets. Pat McAfee on live television, on WWE's own television programs, are essentially telling you, the viewer, that their product actively sucks. And they're making really stupid decisions in terms of their ticket pricing, because I believe they do dynamic pricing. They're essentially saying WrestleMania hasn't really been as successful compared to last year in terms of ticket sales. That is exactly what they're doing on these shows with Pat McAfee. They're acknowledging that, they have these issues. Better yet, another thing I'd like to compare this to is 2018, when they had like the lowest rating episode of Raw. And then the next week they had Vince McMahon, Stephanie McMahon, Triple H, and Shane McMahon all in one ring, flat out stating, oh yeah, we haven't been doing our job. We'll do better. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, yo, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. I don't know, man. Like, acknowledging your problems on television baffles me sometimes. Not even sometimes, it baffles me all the time. It is so stupid Like, they genuinely believe that acknowledging their actual problems, that is causing people to turn off from their product, is actually going to garner interest. Think it's a good idea. I mean, I don't know. I have absolutely no idea. This pairing is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And it's really stupid, in my opinion. Really, really, really stupid on all levels. Really dumb. And I don't know what the hell's going to happen at WrestleMania between Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton, but really, the story is not even about Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes anymore. The story is about Pat McAfee and Jelly Roll. Oh yeah, and by the way, there's a PLE happening after WrestleMania. It's called Backlash. Guess what that main event is going to be? It's going to be Cody Rhodes and Jelly Roll taking on Randy Orton and Pat McAfee. That is exactly what's going to happen at WrestleMania or at Backlash. That's exactly what's going to happen. It is what it is. It is what it is. Am I happy about it? No. But what can you do? It's WWE in 2026. They love their celebrities more than they do their own talent. They have more faith in celebrities. And look, there's nothing wrong against utilizing celebrities. You know, a lot of people say WWE utilizing celebrities sucks, blah, blah, blah. WWE has used celebrities for many decades, since the 1980s. And it was actually a smart move by Vince McMahon in expanding the WWF nationally. He did not want a niche product. He wanted something that the mainstream can appeal to. That's why he had the Rock and Wrestling Connection on MTV, Cyndi Lauper, you know, Mr. T, Hulk Hogan, everybody. There's nothing wrong with utilizing celebrities in wrestling. There is nothing wrong with that. But here's the difference between back then and now. WWF used celebrities back then and even into the late 90s. Hell, WCW utilized celebrities. They utilized Dennis Rodman very well. Dennis Rodman, a part of the NWO, they did Dennis Rodman and Hogan taking on DDP and Karl Malone at Bash of the Beach 98. Meanwhile, on the WWF side, they did Mike Tyson. They had Mike Tyson. And that brought a lot of people back into the WWF product. Also with the rise of Steve Austin and all the other great cast of characters that was the Attitude Era. But at the same time, if you look at what WWE is doing with these celebrities now, it does not feel genuine. It feels forced. And look, Pat McAfee's a fan. Jelly Roll's a fan. iShowSpeed, maybe he is a fan, but at the same time, I think guys like Kai Cenat are fans. And iShowSpeed, he's probably a fan, but at the same time, he's like one of the top streamers in the world. WWE now is essentially a hub for a bunch of celebrities and influencers. That's what it is. It's not about the talent anymore. It's about, do you have enough influence? Are you able to go viral? That's all it is about. It's not about the talent anymore. It's about the influencers and the celebrities. And there's nothing wrong with being an influencer. If you want to be an influencer, go right ahead. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying. WWE has changed their philosophy greatly. When you see celebrities or influencers left and right on every random episode of Raw or SmackDown, you know you got a problem. Again, it feels forced. It does not feel genuine at all. And I understand they're trying to garner mainstream appeal. I get it. But they are already mainstream. So really, what is the goal that you are trying to achieve? This whole Pat McAfee thing is ridiculous. And it's absolutely stupid. The match between Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes could have sold itself. It really could have. But instead, WWE opted for Pat McAfee, a heel Pat McAfee, and Jelly Roll. That's what they catered to, unfortunately. And it's kind of sad. It's I could be very angry, and I am, but at the same time, it's really sad. Unfortunately, it's really sad. But yeah, that was the WrestleHavoc Podcast. That was the WrestleHavoc Podcast on this, as you guys are watching, this is Tuesday, April 14th, 2026. Thank you guys so much for watching me on this edition of the WrestleHavoc Podcast. Thank you guys so much for watching me on WNN platforms. And as always, please like, subscribe, comment down below, push that bell for notifications, and look out for more videos right here on the WrestleHavoc Podcast channel, which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the friggin' referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. As always, it is yours truly, Flamin' Ricky DeRays, signing out. I'll see you guys all next week. Peace.